We're gonna give it a chance. We're gonna give the movie a chance. It's probably better than you think it's gonna be. It's just the marketing. Marketing is just bad. Disney knows better than to mess up something like this. It might be okay, it might just be meh, but it's gonna be better than you think. Okay. Here we go.
2 hours later.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. 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 This shirt felt appropriate. Hello Fowl fam, my name is Gabby, and since my last video, a lot has happened in the fandom, nay, the world. A lot. So much so that I had to go back and do the unthinkable. I had to go back and watch the Artemis Fowl movie. I know. I did that for you. And oddly enough, the second time it wasn't that bad. After all, I already knew what I was getting myself into, and yelling for about 115 minutes at a corporation's failing and Kenneth Branagh's insistence of using Dutch angles was great for one stress relief. Who knew? Now, a lot of people have already reviewed this movie, my favourite of which is Dominic Noble's, link in the description. Sometimes I'll just put it on in the background and dance along like, yeah, this is my favourite song. But those are generally covering the movie as a whole. I want to go into some of the nuts and bolts of why it went wrong in the first place. Because I'm a nerd and I desperately want Disney to do better. Just please do better. I'm begging you. But before we go any further, if you like the idea of an Artemis Fowl podcast that is definitely doing better than the movie, please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications every 1,000 years or so. Leave a comment seeing what videos you'd like to see in future, please. I'm going to be focusing on 3 major problems I believe this movie has: corporate data, being a scriptwriter in Hollywood, and presumptions of audience intelligence. But I know y'all are just here for the memes, so since I could only get through this low-budget children's puppet show excuse for a blockbuster movie by making extensive notes the whole way through, 25 pages worth, I decided to air out my own grievances as we proceed in a segment I like to call, How Was This a Movie? This is kind of the easiest subject to cover. It's the process of creating a movie in a business setting. the corporate hand that guides the entire process. The investors, executives, focus groups, marketing teams, at the end of the day, their entire job is to tell the business what you as a consumer want. And let me tell you, from a marketing point of view, the Artemis Fowl book series makes no sense. The main character is a nerdy, opinionated, mean bad guy who wins in his villainous scheme. By all rights, we should hate him. And we kind of do. But he's got such style and confidence that we kind of want him to win at the same time. Whereas from a corporate point of view, having a fun but morally good and overall bland protagonist the viewer can project onto sells. The world of the fairies is vibrant and interesting, but morally grey in places, like its government and police, and its magic system is not kissing Tolkien's pontificating backside every 5 flippin' minutes. Whereas the data says that having a fun, family-friendly, magical world with just the right amount of cultural diversity and the cultural touchstone of Ring of the Lords for character design reference sells. Unlike most YA, we're not given a shiny-eyed protagonist who slowly becomes darker and more serious as the series progresses. We get someone at their darkest point, who ultimately fulfills the teenage power fantasy not to lead revolutions or be a celebrity or chosen one, but just to be taken seriously, to learn to be a better person, even when it's hard, regaining childlike innocence instead of casting it aside. This isn't some sprawling adventure about warring countries and some ultimate power. It's about a damaged person trying to put themselves back together through greed. Corporate says no! Everyone wants the magical MacGuffin. Boy gets his dad back. Friends forever! From Disney's data, they believe 3 things. Good guy movies are profitable. Special effects are profitable. Preteen markets are profitable. So when it became clear that the Artemis Fowl movie wasn't exactly hitting all these data points, they sent in their executive team to tidy it up around the edges, make sure it's just hitting it just right. Simple enough. So why didn't it work? I'll tell you. It's because my first statement at the beginning of this section was a lie. Corporate data is, in fact, not about what the consumer wants. It's about what the corporate wants. Executives, focus groups, marketing teams are actually meant to find the best ways to convince you, the consumer, not what you want, but what you are willing to pay for. This is a big reason why movie studios buy the rights to books in the first place. Because they come pre-packaged with an audience that has a vested interest in watching the movie, even if it's terrible and has nothing to do with the books. Looking at you, Percy Jackson. I believe one source said on the matter that this was a movie by numbers, and they're not wrong. Every possible box they could tick, from a goody two-shoes protagonist to a sassy but ultimately female as characterization counterpart to a bid for cultural diversity. I mean, Protector, that doesn't feature much in the story because the protagonist is just so awesome. Disney tried to please everyone, and they ended up pleasing no one. Also, I'm going to talk about Disney's take on diversity in this movie because, wow. Now, as we can all see, I am very white, to the point that if I went outside in a bikini, we wouldn't need the ice cube. I could simply bounce back the sun's rays into space and save us all from global warming. Even I can see that This was not diversity. What it was fake virtue signaling. Now, virtue signaling in this context would essentially be when Netflix comes out in support of the LGBTQ plus community or Black Lives Matter. That's not actually them being in support of those movements. It's them having a look at society and its overwhelming values and working to reflect those, not out of the goodness of their hearts, but because it works well in their financial interest. They want to seem morally superior to their competitors. It's a marketing scheme. And Disney's Artemis Fowl goes hard on the diversity front. Like, they whitewash the main female character and then cast Butler and Juliet, the only servitude roles in the entire series, I might add, to be black. And then the only guy who has anything to do with technology and computers is of Indian heritage. This is not me having a go at the actors. They did a brilliant job, all things considered. Like, they were just doing their job, and I commend them for that. However, I will have a go at the corporation that didn't realize the problems with that. In the words of one of my housemates on the subject, this movie was a straight, white, cis male idea of what diversity looks like. What executives fail to understand is that we, as an audience, don't want data. We want stories. We want stories that challenge and emotionally move us. We want likable and interesting characters we haven't seen before. We want teen criminal masterminds that couldn't kick a football if they tried and would probably hurt themselves in the process. We want women of colour unapologetically in positions of power. We want protective guardians that at the end of the day we just all want to hug from and, aren't walking race whoopsies on behalf of a corporation. We wanted Die Hard with fairies. We got Avatar The Last Airbender 20 Fast, 20 Furious. And now for our special segment, How Was This a Movie? I would like to start off this section by reading some genuine positives I did find in the movie, because I feel like giving a balanced argument is important while analysing these kinds of things. So, pro. Visuals are very nice. I like the architecture and interior design, even if it does feel like someone's Pinterest board. Pro. I like the font at the beginning, somewhere between fantasy and screenplay. Pro. Cinematography is nice. Cons! Why is Mulch the narrator? Artemis is on a surfboard. Literally anything else could have framed his love of Ireland. The castles, the libraries, the sheep. Also, who thinks Ireland and goes surfing? The water is freezing. What the... The Artemis Fowl movie, brought to you by hypothermia and the Irish Tourist Board. Lazy writing. Artemis attending a normal school is possibly the most unrealistic thing in this film thus far. You're telling me that the super mega awesome genius who lives in a freaking mansion with its own lighthouse for some reason. In case anyone didn't realise that was the sea and just thought it was a lake or a particularly overzealous pond next to his house. You're telling me that guy is just rubbing elbows with Darren, whose mum works down the co-op? They killed off Angeline for her mental health issues. I'm done with this movie and it hasn't even started. Ah, so this is where the skateboarding happens. And you can tell that Artemis is cool because not only is he wearing a beanie, but he's also wearing a helmet under his beanie because safety rules, kids. This is what happens when you let Orion write the screenplay. I don't know what to tell you. You can tell it's dramatic. Artemis dropped his milk.
He needs some milk.
Are Butler's weird eyes never going to be explained, or is that just something we're going to have to learn to deal with? Also, why does no one else have this kind of stylistic choice? Not even Foley, and he's a fucking centaur. I do like how a light, a seat, and a narrative device to further advance the plot folded out of one set of shelves. Thanks, IKEA! So Mulch is just a very tall dwarf. Wow, you're really going hard on this whole faux diversity thing, aren't you, Disney? Briar can't just be a scheming bureaucrat. No! He has to be manipulated because he's a man. Why else would he follow a woman's instructions? Why does Root have a West Country accent? Why does Foley only have a skirt over the front half? From an anatomical point of view, I'm concerned. Is no one going to question why Briar is here? What did he even get arrested for? Holly's personality thus far? Girl! For those who don't know, being a screenwriter is hard. It's not enough to be funny or talented. You have to tick all the right boxes. You have to hit the right story beats and still be able to please executives. I took a screenwriting course in my second year of uni, and this is what my tutor had to say on the matter. You have to be on set, and most of the time it's an executive or an actor that's like, no, that doesn't sound right. This character would never say that. Change it. And if you don't, that's it. You're gone. You're fired. It doesn't matter if the changes make sense to the story. It doesn't matter if it's your screenplay to begin with. And you know what? It's at that point that you have to look at your bank account and figure out whether you have enough money to go on and do that passion project you really want to do. And then you just go, okay, have a nice life. See you next time. Needless to say, the screenwriting business is cutthroat. Now, how does this apply here? Well, I'll tell you. It's because they had 4 separate writers on the script of this movie. Conor McPherson, Adam Klein, Michael Goldenberg, and Hamish McColl. As a writer, I am freaking incensed by this. Disney wonders why this thing flopped when they refuse to trust the scripts or even the stories they're handed. Instead, they think they can paper over the cracks by hiring someone else every time an executive points out an issue. Disney trusts their data more than people that have spent their entire careers understanding stories and how audiences are affected by them. To be told that your work isn't good enough by someone who, chances are, has never picked up a book on story writing in their life seems embarrassing to an extreme I don't even want to think about. By constantly changing people out like this and telling them to fix a script by adding elements that really add no value to it, the thing has no plot. It has no consistent tone. The entire movie felt like the first 10 minutes for a good reason. No one writer could establish any kind of voice or theme. It was more like they threw all the elements of a story into a blender and hit frappe. And we can tell at some point the movie's plot might have been vaguely recognizable as Artemis Fowl because of the publications surrounding it, such as The Art of Making Artemis Fowl and various other side books in which there are clear references to the gold plot as opposed to the Aculus plot. And then there's always shots like this, which just make me want to cry. This thing was a train wreck. They didn't even communicate well enough with their publishing department that these changes were going forward. They were so hurried and rushed as it was that these, trails of their incompetence still exist in the world and were published. That is almost astounding. It's also very stupid. Welcome to 2020. We be like this. Here's a quote by my own mother on the subject of the movie. The problem is, Disney isn't good on live action. If Artemis Fowl had been an animated feature, it would have had a lot more character, because John Lasseter would have been in charge of it. He would never have let that sort of thing happen. He would have made everyone in that room read the books and actually understand it first. A few things would have been changed. This is Disney after all, but the heart of the story would have been there. And you know what? My mum is a smart lady, and she right. I'm also going to read another quote from my mother because I feel like we all need it at the moment. So last night, I had the weirdest dream. I met Kenneth Branagh, and I just punched him in the face. And I said, that's for the Artemis Fowl movie. First, for reference, my mother has never watched the movie. She simply saw that I was upset by it and her mothering instincts kicked in. Second of all, you better watch yourself, Brenna, 'cause Sarah gonna have a few words with you. I genuinely love my mother, and I know she's going to watch this. Hi, Mum! And now, a return to our special segment, How Was This a Movie? Exposition time! Yay, more of this! So no help on the character building front by Root and Cudgeon being friends because, heaven forbid a man and a woman be platonic friends. Worst ghillie suit ever. Why couldn't the troll have been an animal, and why couldn't the goblins have been massive lizards? Also, why did they have to be racially coded? Tolkien isn't the blessed, unquestionable lord and saviour of the fantasy genre. Other ideas exist! Kenneth really wanted to prove how clever he was, didn't he? Time freeze. Because time stop was too confusing. Holly's characterization has been bumped up from girl to girl with maternal instincts. Dutch angles. We interrupt this special episode of How Was This a Movie because the mention of Dutch angles has invoked my housemate Megan.
Sup?
Who has some things to say about Kenneth and his use of Dutch angles.
So the reason I'm qualified to get angry about Dutch angles is that I did 2 years of a film studies A-level, and part of that film studies A-level means that I now know way more about cinematography than anyone has ever wanted to know, but I'm not an expert, so this is an entirely non-expert opinion. I'm just very passionate about, like, filmmaking as a hobby, for me personally. But anyway, like, fucking Kenneth Branagh and his obsession with Dutch angles would be the death of me. Someone needs to take them away from this man. So, if you're familiar with Thor, the first Thor movie, not the best of Marvel's output. It's fine, but I can't think of that many people who's like, Thor, my favourite Marvel movie. Thor Ragnarok, on the other hand, that's great, that's not what we're talking about here. So Kenneth Branagh, director of whatever nonsense the Artemis Fowl movie ended up being, is also the director of Thor. Thor is a movie shot almost entirely in Dutch angles, or at least it seemed that way to me when I was watching it. The camera just spends its whole time tilted slightly to one side. And, like, the Dutch angle can be great. It can symbolise things like the world being turned on its head, the protagonist's, like, mindset changing, things like that. But if you use it constantly, it completely loses all meaning, which is what Kenneth Branagh is doing both in Thor and in this movie. It's deeply, deeply frustrating seeing this technique just being used willy-nilly. No more Dutch angles. Someone take Kenneth Branagh away from Dutch angles. He clearly cannot be trusted to use them responsibly. And that's it. Those are my thoughts on Dutch angles.
And now we return you to your episode of How Was This a Movie? Opal Cowboy's the bad guy. Obvious plot twist is obvious. Someone get M. Night Shyamalan on the phone, please. Fairy unaccounted for in the real world. Is Root saying the fairies themselves aren't real? Why is Holly in a rabbit hutch? I am now declaring myself the official leader of the Ferdia, Lara and Tamara Protection Society. You try attacking them, I come for your knees. Got that? Good. Let's continue. So magic is controlled by crystals now. Okay. Flannels! I swear, Artemis looks like a suburban lesbian in this movie. Like, he's 5 minutes away from getting a pickup truck, 17 dogs, and moving across country with his girlfriend. So fairies speak exclusively English now. Well, bless my crumpets and call me a Jabberwocky. I didn't know the Empire went down that low. So Artemis officially can't have any independent thoughts or opinions now. Good to know. Artemis has a gun now. All hope is lost. So let me get this straight. Opal is no longer allowed to be a beautiful, driven businesswoman drawn to the dark side by wants of power. She's a revolutionary who wants justice for her people and mass genocide. Is Opal a Nazi? I know this is difficult to believe, but this is actually a children's movie. If the info dumping and Disneyfication didn't tell you that. I will admit, children's media is difficult at times. You want to make things obvious, but not overly so. You want to keep things engaging, but you want to pace the story correctly. You want to set up suspense, but you don't want to make it too dark, otherwise your audience could get scared. But you know the one thing you really shouldn't do if you want to appeal to children at all? Don't act like they're stupid. I have 3 little cousins, around a decade younger than myself, and I love them dearly. They're so sweet. But if you act like they're too young to get something, they will tear you apart. When I asked the youngest one, Malachi, about what he thought of the movie, he said this, and I quote, "I am absolutely offended." He is also the closest being I've ever met to Miles Fowl, so take that as you will. It's a consistent thing in anything to do with children to underestimate their intelligence and presume, because they're younger, they would struggle to wrap their heads around any complex or morally grey storytelling. When I was 5, I was fascinated by Agatha Christie murder mysteries, and you literally had stories like And Then There Were None, in which a group of stranded guests on an island are periodically offed by an unknown murderer in very detailed, violent ways. Now, this could just be down to me being a weird child. You know what, that's probably the only point I'm trying to make here. But children absorb a lot more information than we give them credit for. Why on earth would you dumb things down for them? Every single point in the Artemis Fowl movie is made about 7 times. Apart from the stuff that really needs to be explained. See, the Aculos is a source of great magic. Cool. But what does it actually do? My father died protecting the Aculos. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands. It's just too powerful. Okay, but why? You can't let Opal have the Aculos, Artie. She'll use its magic. And why is that a bad thing? Sandwiches. It's kind of ironic, given the subject matter of the books. Half of Artemis's success is due to the fact that he's constantly underestimated for his age. This clearly shows that no one on that executive team read the book. And even if they did, that point just went straight over their heads. I also find it interesting that they truly don't understand who their audience is in the first place. Disney presumes that it's going to be filled with normal boys, the type who like sports and adventures and flannel shirts. So they change Artemis's characterization to reflect that demographic. Except that's not your audience, Disney. You know why? Because all those kids are outside, doing stuff. You know who's inside, watching a movie about fairies with laser guns? Nerds! AKA the voice that Artemis originally reflected. Besides, Disney, have you ever met a 12-year-old boy? One word, feral. Even then, that is not the majority of your audience. Because, Disney, you bought the rights to a book that started in the early 2000s. Therefore, the majority of your audience will be the millennials to Gen Z that grew up with those in the first place. And heaven knows you should be trying to appeal to us. Why? Because we have a disposable income and access to the internet. Children don't. We could buy the tickets for the movie, you know, in the times before 2020. We could get the merchandise, and we could give you free marketing online by singing your praises. Children can't do that. And here we find the crux of the matter. Kids don't have a disposable income, but their parents do. Parents that have been led to believe that Disney is the best, most family-friendly way to raise their young, with all the toys, all the theme parks, and all the streaming services their little hearts could desire. That is truly why Disney went to all this trouble. Multiple writers, disappointing fans, and of course ticking every frickin' box on the hero's journey list they could. Also, Karen can feel okay letting her children watch a movie about a criminal. Undervaluing audiences' intelligence is also down to the location of the business in the first place. Disney is an American company and is trying to appeal to a largely American audience. This is meant as no disrespect to my American viewers. However, The way stories are portrayed in American media is very much by numbers or black and white. This is why in American movie trailers, you'll get a summary of the entire story, whereas in British trailers, you just don't. I'm using British as my main example here because, well, listen to my voice. American audiences need to know everything there is to know about a movie before choosing to go see it. Is there any big actors in it? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? What genre does this fall into precisely? Whereas British audiences like a good question. If you tell us everything there is to know about a story, we get bored and we just can't be bothered. We're pessimistic people like that. Of course, this is a wild overgeneralization, but then again, most statistics are, and that's what businesses like Disney are working off of, statistics. The most clear example of the American impact on this story can be found in its portrayal of Irish culture. It's watered down to hills, fairies, and the Irish blessing. Ireland is so much more than that. It is one of the strongest literary histories in the world. It's one of the world's leaders in international food aid, and the people are bonkers, and that is amazing! The current president of the Republic of Ireland is called Michael D. Higgins, aka Miggledy Higgledy. And he is possibly one of my favourite humans I've never met. He looks like a leprechaun. He's a politician, a poet, a sociologist, a broadcaster, and once apparently beat Boris Johnson in a Greek rap battle. He is beloved in Ireland to the point they made tea cozies of him. I love this. Also, he has a dog. Its name is Brode or Brod. I'm sorry I can't pronounce it. As you can hear, I'm not built for this. But oh my god, this dog is amazing! He looks at him with such love! I can't! This is so adorable! Michael D. Higgins, go look him up! None of this is reflected in the Artemis Fowl movie for fears that American audiences wouldn't get it. This is why American media is infamous for its repeated use of tropes and over-explanation. American media producers like to create content that can be accessed by any level of understanding and isn't necessarily taxing. More stuff that can be put on in the background and vaguely enjoyed for half an hour. Again, overgeneralized. British people do have that as well. It's called Love Island. And now our final entry into our special segment, How Was This a Movie? So apparently dwarves aren't fairies anymore. But fairies is a general term, not species specific. Wow, Josh Gad really wanted to be Jack Black in this. It's almost endearing. Holly likes 80s love ballads? You know what? I will accept this one. That one is now canon. We like it. Also, fun fact, this movie accidentally made Holly bisexual because Trouble is played by a girl. Name of Chi Lin Nim. I do apologise if I got that name wrong. I am dyslexic and I'm going off Google. But aka a girl. Because as we all know, you can't have a subplot about sexism if you just put more women into your story. Isn't that right, Disney? But that's besides the point. Trouble's a girl now, and as we all know, Trouble and Holly date in the books. Holly's now bisexual. Thanks, Disney. Very cool. Your dad's missing?
Yeah.
Mine's dead. Wow, your dad and my dad work together. Let's be friends forever. Wait, your mum's named Martha too? I'm autistic and even I can tell this is not how friendship works. They didn't even give Root a first name in this. They just didn't think out anything to do with why Judi Dench was suddenly here. Not even mulch is free from the Disneyfication. All he wants is to be small. But somebody think of the character arc! Artemis Fowl II has the personality of a brick in this, and I hate it. Disney sunk $25 million into this movie. So why does everything feel so cheap? Great! They're all working together now! After zero communication. Holly is either doing her best bug on flypaper impression, or she's auditioning to be part of Sia's next album, given how long she's spending on that chandelier. Artemis called Butler Buddy. Not old friend, Buddy. The Americanization has gone too far. What is with the creepy puppets? What do they want? Did they kill Angeline? They took the first page of the book and turned it into a spell. I'm almost impressed, though notice the 10 times 10 part is missing. Could it be they didn't want to incur the wrath of the Christians? What is this black shit coming out of Opal? Just... what? Oh. Great, so I suppose we can't have Artemis Sr. be an amputee anymore. Thanks, ableism. Is it weird I now ship Butler and Artemis Sr. from this movie? And could that be down to the fact that they've had more basic character interaction in the 5 seconds they've been on screen together than anyone else in the entirety of its runtime? Wow, they were so sure they were going to get a second movie out of this. It's almost adorable. I almost want it to happen. Mostly so I can make fun of it. And in the end, no characterization was had that day. Lord, this movie was a travesty against the eyes, ears, and every other sense in between. And yes, I am counting spiritually. The only redeeming moment in the entire movie, for me, was that point in the beginning where Artemis talked to Dr. Poe. That part gave me hope. You could tell Ferdia Shaw knew the words. He knew the character. He genuinely wanted to be Artemis. But the script wouldn't allow him to. Disney. I know this is weird given the fact that I've spent the however many minutes it's been now basically roasting you. But if you do end up making a second Artemis Fowl movie, please let me write and direct it. I want to give Ferdia Shaw the chance to be Artemis in all his sooty glory. At the very least, I can promise you, my attempts will be better than Kenneth's. But that's all the madness I have time for today. I started recording this at about 5 this afternoon, and as you can see, the sun has disappeared. Or at the very least, you could just tell by my lighting. But until next time, I'm gonna go order myself a pizza because I can't be bothered to cook this evening. And I'm gonna finish the rest of... It's raining. I didn't even notice it had been raining outside. But then again, that's England. We kind of be like that sometimes. Oh God. Oh, I'm tired. I'm really tired. Bye. Bye.